Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Scorbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. So today we're going to look at the last week of October. That's October 24th, which is today, a Sunday, until next Sunday, October 31st, which is Halloween, as it were. So we'll take a look at that. There is less happening this week than there has been happening in October, and yet the energy of this October continues to roll along, as it were. We had those four retrograde planets that by the 18th were all direct. We had a very powerful new moon, of course. We had a very powerful full moon. And so we're still on that sort of full moon energy. We do go into the last quarter this week, which is kind of a reorientation of the whole process. And then at the beginning of next month, we have a new moon in Scorpio, which is also very powerful. Are you tired of me saying powerful, crazy, amazing? Oh my goodness. Well, that will continue. So continue with the thrills and the spills as we move through, as the stars move through the heavens. So we'll start with the major aspects that are occurring today, which is Sunday, the 24th. And today, let me grab my calendar. Okay. So today we have the moon in Gemini. And the Gemini moon, of course, is very much a mental moon. A lot of times, Gemini moon, we think about our feelings. We don't necessarily feel them. But of course, tomorrow at 5 p.m., the moon moves into Cancer. And so all those thoughts we had perhaps about our feelings, we will start to feel them. Today, Mercury, which is the ruling planet of Gemini, is actually making an inconjunct to Uranus. The interesting thing about that is Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So it's similar in its nature to Mercury in that it is mental and mentally stimulating, but it occurs at a higher vibrational level. And sometimes we cannot discern what the information coming in through Uranus, because it can come in as flashes of intuition. It could come in as just these ideas that pop into our head. And if you ask, if you ever find yourself saying, where'd that come from? It's usually coming from Uranus, because that's the kind of energy it is. It just sort of pops in. It can come in as what we are calling downloads, right? That's something that we talk about very often in the spiritual community, these energetic downloads that we get. Generally, that's the way Uranus works in a chart as well. The inconjunct between Mercury and Uranus requires an adjustment. Inconjuncts always require an adjustment because the elements of the two planets are dissimilar. The energies, in the case of Uranus, is fixed, and Mercury in Libra is cardinal. There's no real commonality, so you have to make these adjustments, and they can either have the energy of a Virgo side in conjunct or a Scorpio side in conjunct. Both Virgo and Scorpio are energies in which we need to change something or make adjustments. With Mercury, with Virgo, it's usually a mental adjustment, but with Scorpio, it's usually an emotional adjustment. So while we're dealing with two mental energies with Mercury and Uranus, it can be it can create problems because we become attached to our ideas. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, oops, sorry. Oh dear. All right, let me share my screen. All right, so we're going to start with this right here, I believe. So this is today. This is the inconjunct between Mercury and Uranus. This is actually the third of three, and the reason for that, because usually these just will happen once, is because the first one occurred right before Mercury retrograde, And so we have three of these. So we've had three sort of attempts to become sort of unattached to our feelings about our ideas, our feelings about our ideas. But if we look at the initial conjunction of this, it actually occurred. So when we look at the way two planets interact with each other, there's always a starting point to that interaction. And that starting point is the new moon phase or the conjunction of those two planets. And so we had a conjunction of Mercury and Uranus back on April 24th. And that we can see happened here right around 11 degrees of Taurus. And I want to read to you the Sabian symbol because I think it's pretty apt. So let me find that here. I think I have it. We have a little thing in here. Oh, that's not it. Okay, it says a woman watering flowers in her garden, the development of the powers of the mind on which ego consciousness is based. So this really is this symbol sort of well, let me read what Dane Rudger says about it, and then I'll comment. It says the psychomental nature of the human being takes form out of the fulfillment and transcendence of biological functions and drives. And so the things that drive us in our through our physical body, as we come to understand them and we try to transcend them, right? It creates this ego consciousness that we have. It says the human being takes form out of the fulfillment and transcendence of biological functions and drives, much as a bud appears as the sap rises and bursts forth into bloom. As the roots, so the flowers, is the old axiom. And I guess we could also say, as the seed, right, the potential becomes the flower. And it really sort of depends on whether you're watering it or not. This reminds me of that old story of the Native American elder who was out with a young person. And he was saying that we have two wolves within us. We have, the light and the dark. We have the loyal and generous and family loving and protective wolf. And then we have the lone wolf, the ferocious wolf, the more negative energy of the wolf. And the young person said, well, which one am I, or which one, which maybe it's which one am I? And the old man says, the one you feed. And so what are you feeding? Like, we can all have these great beginnings, but are we doing the work through the process? Are we watering? Are we nurturing? Are we pruning? And this inconjunct really is a pruning, right? Both the types of inconjuncts that I spoke of have more of a pruning energy, which is interesting because both, I feel, Virgo and Scorpio have a pruning energy with them. Okay, so the other interesting thing, so let's take a look at the other. So this was the initial conjunction at that 11th degree, right? This was the first inconjunct. This was September 10th. And we have Uranus here at 15. We have Mercury at 15. And, Uranus was at 15 for a long time. It changed direction, I believe, in August at 15 degrees. And here we are in September 10th. We still have it at 15 degrees. Most of September, I believe it was at 15 degrees. Didn't actually get retrograde back to 14 degrees, I believe, until October. So it was in that degree for a long time. And to have a fixed sign the most fixed of the fixed signs, it has to be Taurus, because the most fixed element of the four elements is Earth. And Uranus is the great disruptor, and Uranus is sitting right there. So on a certain level, this has been a real turning point for us, as we look at the first 15 degrees of Taurus with Uranus in it. Now, of course, Uranus is moving backwards. It's backing up into those degrees before 15, but 2022 is the start of that second half of the degrees, and things are can continue to change. Things that we thought we could depend upon, the guarantees, all of that. That's Taurus, are up in the air. They come down, and then we see what we have left. All right, so and then we had October 12th, 2021, we had the same inconjunct. Here we have Mercury here at 14. See, now it's at 14 degrees. And we had, where is it? Uranus here at 14 as well. And we can see that Mercury was retrograde at that time. So this was a pruning process as well, but because Mercury was retrograde and also Uranus was retrograde, Uranus is retrograde through this whole series of inconjuncts. This was a little bit more of an introspective time for pruning, and then of course we have the one that's happening. Excuse me, we looked at that. The one that's happening today. All right, so on Monday we have the moon shifting into Cancer. That occurs at 5 p.m. on the east coast of the U.S. We also have the sun and the moon making a lovely trine to one another. The sun, of course, is newly in Scorpio, and the moon, of course, newly in Cancer. And this is a trine of understanding, right? This is part of the lunation cycle that began with that new moon in Libra. And so we've come to some realizations, we've come to some lessons in that, and it's time to share what we know with one another. On the 26th, the moon continues to move through Cancer. So while the moon's in Cancer, we're feeling very deeply. And of course, the sun is in Scorpio. So this is a deeply feeling time. So people may be more moody than usual or not. It's just a serious time when we really have to dig deep into our own feeling nature, sort of cleaning out the proverbial basement of the unconscious. Of course, that's a Scorpio thing, which we will be having in, as they say, spades when it comes to November, because not only the sun will be in Scorpio, but Mars will be in Scorpio as well. All right, we also have on that day a square between Venus and Neptune. Now, what do we have here? What am I looking at? I don't know. Okay, this is October 24th. Okay, so let's take a look. Right here. Okay. Venus last quarter square to Neptune. So the interesting thing about the previous Uranus Mercury inconjunct is that Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So Uranus acts like Mercury, but at a higher vibrational level. Now, Venus and Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So it's the same sort of relationship, as it were, but it's dealing with Venusian things, Neptunian things, love, relationship, compassion, idealism, right? And the last quarter square is always a crisis in consciousness. So there's a reorientation that occurs. Now, the initial conjunction of these two occurred on March 13th of 2021, and it occurred at 21 degrees of Pisces, 21 degrees of Pisces. And I will read the 21st degree of Pisces for you guys. Now remember, this was the initial, this 21 degrees of Pisces was the initial sort of impetus and impulse for this. So let me, I apologize, guys, if you can hear my bird. It's very annoying to me. I had to come in the house for this. You may not hear him, but he's being very annoying to me. My husband left the door open to his where his cage is. So, all right. Under the watchful eye of a kind eye of a Chinese servant, a girl fondles a little white lamb. Growth in consciousness in its earliest tactile awareness of the wonders of unsophisticated living. it says the Chinese servant, according to the occult tradition, the original Chinese race was an extension of the humanity or root race preceding ours. Thus, the stress upon biological factors of family and ancestors, and also on the dualism of the yin and yang interplay. The Chinese servant represents the past as the servant of the new evolution. The white lamb suggests a sign of all beginnings, Aries. This new evolution is just about to begin during the late Piscean phase of the cycle year. It is as yet an ideal in a white loveliness. The girl discovers a new feeling of the touch of wool, of animal warmth. The priest, okay. Now we witness another kind of discovery, a sensuously emotional discovery, perhaps a pre-sentiment of the mother feeling. It says, the vision of white hope, hope for a future that can only be felt, only naively. So there's this sense of, it's kind of an idealistic viewpoint of, I think, of, a previous race helping the evolution of the next race, all in connection to like this very sort of tactile being in your body, and the feelings of warmth that comes from that, and sort of protections that come from that. So that was the initial conjunction that occurred on the 13th of March, and now we come to the 3/4 place, which is a reorientation. And so what that can mean for us is that we become reoriented, things that we've worked upon, ideals that we may have held. It's time for us to reevaluate those and see which ones still apply, maybe which ones fell short, which ones have not panned out. So it's a time to reorient ourselves. And then as we do that, we move towards a more compassionate, humanitarian direction as we move from that 3/4 place into the last quarter of the cycle of these two planets. And that last quarter has the energy of Capricorn and Aquarius and Pisces, which becomes more and more collective as we move into Pisces. So there is sort of because Neptune is in Pisces, there's sort of a wrapping up of a lot of these Piscean themes every time a planet gets into a synodic cycle with Neptune. While Neptune is in Pisces. So there's a lot of wrapping up that has to be done, and a lot of releasing of the energy of the previous age, the Piscean age, which is very much an age of victimizer, guilt. The body is profane, the spirit is sacred. We're moving into a different age, and so we need to have a new set of values. And this interaction between Neptune and Venus, I think, helps us with that. Okay, so let's see what is next. On the 27th, of course, the moon is still in Cancer, and we do have an opposition to Pluto on that day of the Cancer moon, which happens every time the moon moves into Cancer. And so we have an awareness of our power, or a sense of disempowerment. We also get a view of being authorities in our own life, dealing with our own security issues, and growing up. Growing up. On the 28th, we have the moon moving into Leo. That occurs at 5:07 a.m. And we have a last quarter moon. So this is the last quarter crisis in consciousness moon, with the sun in Scorpio, the moon in Leo. Always Scorpio, Leo, always a very dramatic and sensual and intense combination, because we're dealing with fixed signs. We're dealing with fire and we're dealing with water. And whenever fire and water come together, we have some sort of spiritual initiation, right? So it's always intense. There's always great intensity with that energy. And it is part of the synodic cycle or the lunation cycle that began with that new moon in Libra, new ways of relating to one another. And of course, we had the square in the full moon. We had the square to Pluto of the full moon, and opposition to Mars, and a conjunction to Eris. So things have been very, very active and revolutionary when it comes to our relationships to each other and our relationships to those in power. All right, so let's take a look at the next aspect that is a major aspect, which is also occurring. Excuse me, is this it? Yes, on the 28th, that's a waning sextile between Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter and Venus are considered the greater and lesser benefics. They're pretty lucky, as it were. We have Jupiter in Aquarius here at 23 degrees of Aquarius. We have Venus, of course, at 23 degrees of Sag. She's very close to a conjunction to Juno in Sag. Now, Juno has been in Sag for a while now. It was hanging around the south node of the moon for quite a while. Now the south node has moved on. It's now at 2 degrees here. The south node moves this way. Everything else moves this way. And so now we will be having a Venus Juno conjunction in Sagittarius, which is interesting because Juno is an archetype of relationship. And Venus, of course, is also an archetype of relationship, but Sagittarius is an archetype of freedom. And so we will be evaluating our relationships when it comes to how much freedom we have in them. Are we free to be who we really are? And if we're not, does that mean that it's time to move on in that relationship, right? It really is a reflection of how willing you are to be your authentic self. Authenticity is very, very important, especially in Sagittarius. Okay. So we have, this waning sextile is an opportunity for progressive change. Progressive change. It's an opportunity to do what needs to be done. Jupiter, Venus. Jupiter is expansion. Venus can be resources, right? For all people to live a better life, right? But we have to sort of wrangle that out of the hands of the people who hold all the money, which is quite a wrangle, as we can see in America. And people like Kristen Sinema will not agree to raising taxes on the super rich. Like, what is it to her? Except that they're paying her. That's another story for another day. I'm not going to get political on you guys. Okay. Interesting, though. This was the initial conjunction of the synodic cycle that is at its 300-degree mark. It's Aquarius mark, as it were. And that began at 13 degrees of Aquarius. And let me just, I don't remember what that was. So let me find my book. What the heck did I do with my save? See that 13 degrees of Aquarius. I'm a little curious about this. A barometer, the ability to discover basic natural facts that allow us to plan in advance for action. So if this says to me, oh, my hair is doing a weird thing. That's even worse. This says to me, this would be a perfect time for us to get some things done in Congress, to help people who need it, not to keep things as they were. This is an opportunity. Please, 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 somebody wake up and do something. Get it moving. Ugh. Why is it that bad things can happen so quickly and good things take effing forever? That's what I want to know. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, guys. All right, let's keep going here. The next thing we're going to be looking at is Mars is well, actually, the next thing is we're going to be looking at, well, let's look at the 29th. The 29th, which is Friday, There are no major aspects, save the aspects to the moon, square to Uranus, which is always fun, and a sextile to Mercury. The Leo moon, of course, is creative, self-expressive, and it's a Friday. So it could be actually fun Friday because it's always Friday always has that sort of energy of, oh, it's Friday, let's have fun. And when the moon is in Leo, it's all about fun, right? So enjoy your Friday evening. On the 30th, which is a Saturday, we have a couple of things going on. The first thing, and I'm going to take them not necessarily in the order as they occur. The first thing that happens is square between the Sun and Saturn. We'll take a look at that more closely. We also have an inconjunct between Mercury and Neptune. But we have Mars's ingress into Scorpio. Now, this is very interesting because for a number of reasons. First of all, Mars loves being in Scorpio. Mars was the original ruler of Scorpio before Pluto was discovered, and now it's considered to have a co-ruler. So Scorpio is co-ruled by Mars and by Pluto. And it's thought of that the personal planets, the personal ruler of these planets that are naturally ruled by, these transpersonal planets are actually more influence us more. What's going on with those influence us more because they're closer to us, right? It's not a transpersonal energy. Sometimes those transpersonal energy, that's why they call them transpersonal. They're beyond the personal. You can't actually take those things personally. You can take Mars pretty personally, though. So we have Mars moving in a sign that it loves to be in, which is really cool for Mars because the last time Mars was in a sign it really likes being in, Mars was in Aries, and it was retrograde. And it was in Aries for 6 months, but part of that, it was retrograde. So as much fun as Mars likes having in Aries, didn't have as much fun as it normally does, right? But now we have Mars in Scorpio. Mars really likes being in Scorpio. Mars also really likes being in Capricorn, but that's a few months down the line here. So Mars in Scorpio, Mars has been very active with its opposition to Eris and its conjunction to the Sun and its square to Pluto. And it's conjunction to the Sun. Did I say that? Anyway, it's been very active, but it's been in Libra, and Libra is a difficult sign for Mars because Mars likes to go from point A to point B as quick as it can, and Libra requires it to consider every action it takes, which is not a strong suit for Mars. So Mars is considered somewhat like aggravated, as it were, in Libra, although people with Mars in Libra are great at strategy. But now it moves into Scorpio, and Mars in Scorpio is like the knife of a surgeon. It can get in there and with very, very with actually very little blood, it can get what it needs to get, or it can be a slasher film. So Mars in Scorpio definitely is an energy that we need to be well aware of within our own life, and that it is around us. We'll look at what it's doing with Pluto, right? Because Pluto is the other ruler of Scorpio, and we have Pluto. Where's Pluto here? Here's Pluto here. Here's Mars here. Is it still a square? Yes, it's still in square to one another. So and the square, excuse me, is the last quarter crisis in consciousness square. So the energy of that Mars in Scorpio is going to be an energy of breaking down old systems that no longer serve, but very strategically and very precisely, if it's done right. It's done right. So it's going to be a rip roaring time while Mars moves through Scorpio. So just so you know. Okay. The other things happening on that day, here's the sun square Saturn. Here's the sun. Where's Saturn? Here's Saturn. This is occurring at 8 degrees, 8 degrees. This is a last quarter crisis in consciousness square. Oh dear. The sun is illumination. Saturn is the structures, the limits, the limitations. So we're going to see what we can do and what we can't do. There are certain things we're not going to be able to change, but those things that we can change and reorient ourselves, we will be required to do. Now, the initial conjunction of these two things happened on January 23rd. Yes, that was 3 days after the inauguration, right? And we had it at 5 degrees of Aquarius. So let's take a look at 5 degrees of Aquarius. So we're at the 3/4 mark in this synodic cycle, that crisis in action mark. I lost my, oh, here we go. I found it. And what are we looking for? 5 degrees of Aquarius. So the sun and Saturn as a synodic cycle illuminates the limitations. The sun is the center of our solar system. Saturn is at the edge. It's the last planet we can see with our naked eye. Beyond that, we need a telescope to see Uranus and Neptune and Pluto and whatever beyond that, right? So let's see, 5 degrees of Aquarius. So this was the initial conjunction for these two. Oops. So there's always a lesson. With Saturn, there's always a lesson. And with the sun, there's always illumination. So what are we being illuminated to? It says, a council of ancestors is seen implementing the efforts of a young leader. The root foundation of past performances which power and sustain whatever decision is made in a crisis by an individual. Says, it suggests that many situations reliance upon precedents will enable the aspirant to greatness to tap in the power of his deepest roots. So this is really about, in a way, taking the spirit of something, of the wisdom gained through previous experiences, and helping that person who wants to bring something new into things, actually aiding that, right? I almost see like, if you don't mind me, waxing poetic about this, this is sort of like Bernie Sanders and AOC. He was very influential in the way that she looked at politics, right? And so, or a Katie Porter and Liz Warren, Katie Porter, AOC. These are the sort of sorcerer's apprentices, right? To these older, wiser, have more experience, have a different experience, right? Because they're coming from a different generation, but utilizing their wisdom to help propel these new folk out there with the spirit of the belief. But of course, because times change and things change, they're more future oriented, and they have perhaps a set of skills that the older generation doesn't have, right? So that's how I kind of see this symbol in a way, and it's very apt for the sun Saturn, right? Because we are dealing with what is there, what we can work with, what we know from experience, and then how we can illuminate a different future, really. Because Saturn is in Aquarius. So it's not like, even though Saturn is like, this is the rules, we're dealing with Aquarius. So it's the rules around how do we live in a society together, and how do we raise all boats, right? That's Aquarius. So it's kind of an exciting time. And then the last thing that happens on the 30th is this inconjunct between Venus and Neptune. Not Venus, Mercury and Neptune. Here's Mercury at 21. Of course, Neptune is at 21. And there's the inconjunct. This is a Scorpio side inconjunct. So this is also about changing our attachments, our feelings, our emotions around perhaps a spiritual truth, Neptune, Mercury. Maybe perhaps we're being too idealistic and we have to um, make it more amenable to the situation at hand. That could be applied to the situation in the Congress as well. It's very complex in its way, very, very complex and very, very simple all at the same time. But this is a time, in order for us to actually get it out there and be useful to everybody, we may have to make some considerations. And then, of course, on the 31st, we have the moon in Virgo. We have a lovely sextile between the moon and the sun, and we have a trine to Uranus. So it is Halloween, and I'm sure there's going to be some very unique costumes out there with that trine to Uranus. And I feel like they're going to be homemade because we're dealing with, what am I trying to do here? We're dealing with Virgo, right? So Virgo likes to make their own costumes. So I bet you there's going to be a lot of really great costumes out there for Halloween. So, and I know that in a lot of cases, the grown-ups enjoy Halloween more than the kids. The kids like the candy, and I think the grown-ups like, dressing up in their alter egos. So I have this theory about Halloween. It allows you to be your alter ego with, like, this is who I am. It's Halloween. I could be whoever I want to be. You end up being your alter ego. So take notice of who you choose to be at Halloween. So, all right, guys. Well, I was gonna do a card reading, but this has gone longer than it should have, I think. As always, have yourself a great week. Like and subscribe if you find this interesting. I am going to be starting a beginner's astrology class again. It's going to be on Monday nights from 7 to about 9 p.m. It depends. It can be either an hour and a half or a 2-hour class, depending on what the subject is. But I tend to, especially in the beginner's class, I tend to do that full 2 hours because there's a lot to go over. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my website, thesiegeoftransformation.com. And there is an option for a beginner's class. It's a 6-week class and it's on consecutive Mondays. Don't pay attention to the dates. I haven't changed those yet, but you can pay that way if you want, or you can always email me. My email address is below. So have yourself a great week, and I will see you back in November when we go over the astrology Kabbalah of November, which is going to be amazing. All right, guys, love y'all. Namaste.